Hello and welcome to our monthly orientation training for OU Campus. My name is Barbara McQuillan and I'm the training supervisor. In this session, we're going to overview some basic editing functions. During this presentation, I'll be working in a sandbox environment, but if you are an existing customer, you can follow along in your own instance, as the platform functionalities will be the same. I'll also be logged into our OU Campus version 11 interface. While the interface may have a slightly different look, the platform functionalities have not drastically changed from OU Campus version 10. I'll be logged in as a level 8 user, so please be aware that depending upon your user level and individual user permissions, you may be restricted from some of the functionalities I'm going to be showing you today. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode as this session is being recorded. If you have a question during the presentation, you may submit it by clicking on the Q&A section of the Zoom window. I will attempt to address your question as we go along, and there will be a Q&A section at the end of the presentation where I will answer as many remaining questions as time allows. If I don't get a chance to answer your question during the webcast, I will email you an answer so you have it afterwards. With that all said, let's go ahead and begin. So to start with, let's just establish what we'll be talking about today. So our agenda for today, we're going to start by just discussing how do you log into OU Campus. Once we're inside the platform, we'll do an overview of the interface. We will talk about some basic page editing. We're going to talk about creating new content, as well as uploading content. And then finally, at the end, we will have that Q&A. So let's go just jump into OU Campus. So over here, I do already have my sandbox environment set up. This is a live website. So as I kind of go through the different pages, I can navigate to the page where I want to make edits. So let's say, for example, I'm responsible for this library page. Maybe I need to make some edits or changes here. I'm going to navigate to the live page on my website, and from here, I'll log in. So this is one of those unique features of OU Campus. I can log in directly on this page using the direct edit link. The direct edit link is going to be hidden, usually somewhere in the footer. In this case here, it's my last updated date, but I have seen some schools who will use the copyright symbol or maybe some other visual attribute here. This allows me to log in directly on this page. So I don't have to go searching through the platform to get to this page. I'll already be here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that direct edit link, and I'll go ahead and get myself logged in. Perfect. So notice here I am inside the interface. I'm already landing on this library page. A quick overview of what we're seeing here today. Up at the top, this is my global navigation bar. This allows me to navigate throughout the OU Campus platform. I do have my page information here. It tells me which page I've landed on. That PCF file extension is unique to OU Campus. That's a published control file, and it is essentially the page file here inside of OU Campus. Over on the right-hand side here, I have my site dropdown. So right now, my sandbox has a singular site called Galena. So that is the only one that I have here. But if your instance has multiple sites, this would be a dropdown, and it would allow you to navigate between the different sites. Just above the page itself, I have these tabs. This is my page actions toolbar. So if I start by clicking on preview, it's essentially going to take this page itself and move it into preview mode. This gives me a representation of what this page would look like if it was on my live website, and allow me to explain that a little bit further. OU Campus's structure is a decoupled system, meaning the environment that you edit in and the environment that is your live website are separated. So over on the left-hand side, all of us are these CMS users, or content management system, also known as OU Campus. When we make edits and changes, we do it inside OU Campus. In this environment, we call the staging server. All edits and changes will only live in here until you hit publish. That way you can test out changes, make adjustments, do checks on the page, things like that. Make sure your page is perfect before you actually publish it. When it's published, it gets pushed out to your live website. We call that environment your production server, and that's when your web visitors see it. So the purpose of having this preview here is so I can see how it would look like rendered when I do make that publish. The edit over here looks very similar, but the big difference that I'm going to see here are these big green buttons. These are my editable regions. These are spaces on the page that I can open up in a Wysiwyg Editor that allows me to make edits and changes, very similar to the way you would make edits using any kind of editing software with a toolbar across the top. We will see a little bit more of that in just a little bit. My particular user has access to source code, so I could see the source code of this PCF page. And then under properties, I can get more information about the page itself. This is also where I'm going to be able to make some adjustments, which again, I'll show you a little bit later on in this session. So we have a question here that asks, can you also test links on the edit page? So when you're talking about testing links, I think we're talking about whether or not those links are broken. That is something that you can test. So I will walk you guys through doing all sorts of tests on this page. So testing links, testing spelling, and then accessibility checks, and essentially W3c, your HTML code. We'll talk about that too. So yes, you can make all those tests on your page before it actually gets published out to the live website. Continuing across just above this page, I have this little light bulb. And this is an important thing I want to call attention to. The light bulb is part of our check-in, check-out system. As you can see right now, the light bulb is turned off. This page is not owned by anyone. It is available inside the system. When I click on the little light bulb, notice I get an additional option over here. The light bulb's turned on. I now own this page, so I have more powers over it. Clicking it once more checks it back into the system, so it is now available to anyone who has access to it. When I have ownership of this page, no one else can come in here and make edits. It's a safety measure. It's to make sure you don't have multiple people editing a page at the same time, and then one person's ready to publish, but the other one wasn't, but it got published anyway, and now you have unfinished sentences on your live website. So when this light bulb is turned on, I own it. No one else can come in here and edit it. Now, this check-in, check-out system holds on to this status even when I log out. So that's important if I have a page that I'm editing for multiple days. I got a lot of work I got to do here. So if this page is checked out to me, I will continue to own it. The only time a page will automatically get checked back into the system is when I publish it. Other than that, I will maintain ownership of it. Now, this is an important note because there may come times when you accidentally check out a page. So let's say light bulb's turned off, it's available in the system, and I come down here and I click on this main content editable region. Clicking on that is going to open my editor here, but notice the light bulb automatically turned on. I'm in an editing space, so the system is automatically going to give me ownership of it. Now over here on the left, sorry, I'm moving windows. If I hit that little X, it allows me to exit without saving. So I haven't made any changes. Nothing's happened here. Notice the light bulb still turned on. I still own this page. So it's important before you log out each session to take stock of what you own, so that way you can go through and update things or check them back into the system. And here's a nice, easy way to do that. It's using a gadget. Over here on the right-hand side, I have this little plug icon. Clicking on that opens my Gadget Sidebar. Gadgets are little apps inside of OU Campus. They take information and bring it to my fingertips to make it easier for me to access information. So this is good for both editors and administrators to be able to grab that information and be able to interact with it quickly. So the gadget I want to show you here is up at this top, the My Checked Out Content gadget. Clicking on that, it'll open up and it'll show me the list of all of the pages that I have ownership of. As I look at this list, if I look at this file path in here and I think, I have no idea what that page is. Well, this is actually a link. So if I was not here, I could actually click on that link and it'll bring me to that page. So I can quickly just get an overhead view of, ooh, well, what page was that? And if I decide, nah, I don't really need this page, I can click the light bulb right here and notice it'll check the page back into the system. So I do recommend going ahead and checking the My Checked Out Content gadget as the last step before you log out every single session, just to make sure if there are any pages you don't actually need, to check them back in. If you do need them, by all means, hold on to that ownership. But it's a nice way to make sure that people who might need those pages in the future have access to them. If you ever open up your Gadget Sidebar and your My Checked Out content is not displaying, it may mean that it's hidden. You can customize which gadgets appear in the sidebar by clicking on the little gear. Clicking on the gear allows me to manage my sidebar, and here I can go through and turn my different gadgets on and off by just clicking on these tiles. So the little checkbox tells me that it is there. Bottom right-hand corner, I can click Save to save my preferences. So we have a question, is that also a way to prevent others from changing your content if it's a shared page? Yes, absolutely. So when you own that page, you are the owner of any edits and changes that are happening on it. Now, if I made a couple of changes and checked the page back into the system, those edits will remain, but other people would be able to get in and make adjustments and changes as well. That's kind of how our approval process works. When I own the page, I make my edits, and then I pass the page over to my approver. My approver gains that page, gains ownership of it, and then the approver can go through and maybe fix a typo here, make a change there. But that is the idea behind our check-in, check-out system. It's to make sure that the one person who's making edits right now is undisturbed through that process. Okay, I'm going to click on this little X on my gadget sidebar just to shrink it back into the side. That actually does become important depending upon your website design. So some websites will give you like a tablet view. So if the gadget sidebar is open, your website might click into tablet view. So closing that to the side will allow you to have that full desktop view. I am very glad we are excited about the check-in, check-out system there. All right. Continuing across here, we do have our publish button. Depending upon how your user preferences have been set up, you may not see publish. You may see a button here that says submit instead. That's that approval process I was talking about before. We call it workflow. So as I make edits to this page, if I'm part of a workflow, I'll click that submit button, which will essentially hand the page over to my approver, and then the approver can look at it and make the final publish from there. Couple more buttons that you'll see in this version 11 interface that you may not see in version 10. So let me just talk about them. You have a little toggle here that essentially allows me to just kind of shrink this top bar here. Gives me a little bit more real estate on the page so I can have a little bit more space while I'm making edits. Finally, I have this more actions toolbar. When I first click on it, notice we've included a link here to view the publish page. So it's one of those things in version 10, you can get to the live page from here inside of OU Campus, but we wanted to make sure that link was a little bit more accessible in version 11. So clicking on that more actions menu, I can click on that view publish page, and it'll literally just open a new tab that shows me the live version of this page. Back to my previous tab inside of OU Campus. If I check out the page, I actually even get more actions that I can perform here. I can save a version, which we'll talk about in just a little bit, and I can do a page check. So there was that question about, well, can you check the links on the page? Absolutely. I can check them when I'm publishing it, or I can check them at any point in time using this page check. Clicking on the page check will show me all of my checks. Again, the interface looks a little bit different between versions 10 and versions 11. However, all of the processes are still here. So let's talk about the checks you can run on your page. I can check them individually by clicking on that little arrow next to each one, or I can run all checks so that way we can go through all of them together. My spelling check is going to check the spelling of the words that are found on the page. If I did have any errors, I would have a little ability to click on that and be able to see what posted. My link check here, again, is going to check all the links on the page. Now, this is checking every link on the page. This will include headers, footers, side navigations, not just the content that I edited. So that link sometimes that check sometimes takes a little bit longer to run, just because it's going to check everything there. My W3c validation is checking the source code of the page. It's essentially checking to make sure that the code is following the standards that are set by your administrator. So oftentimes your administrators are going to set the source code of the page to hold on to the standard of HTML5. This is just going through and making sure that it actually is adhering to all those standards. And then finally, I have my accessibility check here. Now, The accessibility check is going to check against, again, a guideline that is set by your administrator. So they can choose what level of accessibility your website should be adhering to. You're going to notice I have a couple of different categories here of problems. So let's go ahead and click on this link so I can take a look and see what's going on here. Known problems are going to be problems that are inherent in the source code of the page. These are things that you may have edited or may simply be part of the code on the page itself. So if we take a quick scroll here, it tells me that I have an input label or an input where the label is empty. It tells me again, I have an input here where my type of text again still has no label. So it doesn't like that input very well. So I'll tell you right here, this particular one is my search on the page. So I can see in the code itself. So that's something I'd want to reach out to my administrator for, to just let them know, hey, there's something in the code of the page for this particular search box that needs to be addressed for accessibility purposes. Other types of problems that I may see in this known problem area are things like header nesting. So on your live website, you can have different headers and a screen reader will essentially jump between them as it goes to different chunks of content on your page. Your header should always be nested in order. So the very top of your page should be an H1. The next header should be an H2, followed by an H3, followed by an H4. It should always go in order like that. If you went from H1 to H4 to H3 to H2, now you're out of order, and that will get flagged as a known problem. So those are the kinds of things that you're looking for when you are checking this accessibility check. If you end up with a known problem that's a header nesting issue, that's when you'd want to go back into the content and actually make edits to adjust those headers, make sure they go in order. Potential problems on this page are not necessarily issues. So these are things that OU Campus is flagging as this may be possibly an issue, but it needs a human to take a look at it. So we have certain things in here. Let me see if I can find a good one to kind of describe it to you. So there's a good one. So in this particular page, I'm using an H4, and this H4 is getting flagged because it may be used for formatting. So instead of it being an actual header, maybe I just wanted that text to be bigger and bolder, but it's not really a header. So it's getting flagged here as a potential problem. It requires a human to look at it and say, no, really, that is a header. That is an appropriate thing, in which case I don't need to worry about this problem. So those are the different checks that I can run on my page. All right, so now that we talked about checks, let's actually talk about making edits and adjustments to this page. So I'm going to go ahead and click on this big green main content region, which will open up this space on my page, and I'm going to see my Wysiwyg editor. The editor itself is going to adjust in width based upon the size of my screen. So I'm a little zoomed in here, which is why my little icon is falling to the next. So if I zoom out a little bit, this is what you'd see on desktop. OU Campus version 11 has been designed to be responsive, so it'll work down to a tablet level. So if I zoom in, you'll see my bar kind of adjusts, so that way I still have access to all of my buttons and they're not all squished. But I'll zoom out again so you can see the full toolbar as it appears. We do call this the Wysiwyg editor. The word Wysiwyg stands for what you see is what you get. So as I make edits and adjustments here, the way that it appears here is a really good representation of how it'll render when I do have this page set up and published. So it gives me a good idea of what it is that I'm changing. There are all sorts of things and adjustments that I can do using my toolbar up here at the top. And it's very similar to any kind of word processing editing that you've probably done in the past. So let's say, for example, I want to put a header up here at the top. I'm going to place my cursor to the left of this top line. I'm going to hit enter a couple of times. And up here at the top, I'm going to put maybe this particular library is the McQuillan library. I'll go ahead and add that text. And I want this to be a header. So I want the text to be larger. I want it to follow the styling that is a part of my website, but I want it to have more of a callout than that. So I'm going to click and hold and highlight this text. And I have a drop down here that currently says paragraph. So the paragraph is essentially the HTML tag that's wrapping it right now. I want it to be wrapped in one of the headings. Generally speaking, for most designs, the heading 1 is going to be used by the page title. So if I come back here and scroll up a little bit, usually that's going to be your heading 1. So check with your own school's administrators, but most of the time when you're creating headings, you're probably going to want to make this like a heading 2, just so that way it does not have that heading nesting issue that we were just talking about. So I'll create that as a heading 2. I just click it once and it'll go ahead and add that information. So I have a question here about a multi-edit button. Let me bank that question for just a little bit, because you will have, or you may have, multi-edit button options. I'm going to save that for just a little bit so we can go through this editing experience, but I will answer that question. So I'm going to leave it in my queue for now. So there's a question here that says, where did you say that H1 was? So on most designs that I've seen, not all, so check with your school administrator. Do you see how I have the word library back here? There's usually a page heading on your page, and it's usually not inside of an editable region space. Oftentimes I've seen this is the heading 1, which means that in order to follow that appropriate nesting, the next heading that you want is going to be a heading 2. I'll talk in just a little bit about how you edit the content of that heading 1, so that way you can see how you make those adjustments too. Some great questions here. We're very excited to be moving forward. Lots of great things we're going to cover in this session. All right, so I've gone ahead, added my heading here. I'm going to backspace so that way I don't have a big space between those. And now I can just make edits and changes. So maybe over here it's talking about our online catalog. Maybe we don't have an online catalog anymore. We decided to move it all over so it's listed somewhere else. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete out, or backspace, depending upon what kind of keyboard you have, that text there. And then I can easily just make some basic changes. So maybe this word students, I'll double click on it to highlight the whole thing. I want to make that word bold. I'm going to make this italicized. I'll make this one an underline. So the nice thing about OU Campus's editor here is it's allowing you to also use your keyboard functionality. So if you know a keyboard shortcut for any of these editing processes, those do work. So for example, bold is Control or Command B. So I can easily do that as well. We have another question here asking about explaining RSS feeds. So RSS feeds are a slightly more advanced topic than what we would normally cover inside our monthly orientation. I'm going to keep the question in my queue, so at the very end of our session today, I'll be able to answer it if we have the time. But there are other resources that are available that go into RSS feeds. So if we don't have the time to talk about it today, I can provide you with those resources. All right. So we've made a couple of edits here, added some content, removed some content, bold, italicized, underlined, all of those fun things. Up here, I can click on that floppy disk. That allowed me to save this. I also have a big save button at the top. Either way, in version 11, that allowed me to save the adjustments and changes that I've made. So I've made all of these edits and changes, but remember that decoupled system. All of these edits only live inside of OU Campus. They're not on my live website yet. So you may come upon a page and just wonder, well, wait a second, how do I go ahead and make that transition and understand what's different here? So how do I know what's inside OU Campus compared to what is on my live site? And that's where we're going to go into versions. Clicking on my versions tab here, I'm going to see a listing of all of the versions that have ever existed for this page. Versions are automatically created whenever a page is published. So you get essentially this long-term storage version of this page. I can also manually create a version. As long as the page is checked out to me, when I click on that More Actions button, I have this Save Version. And this allows me to essentially take a snapshot of the way OU Campus page, that staging page exists, and save it for a long term. So I'm going to say I made some text edits here. Bottom right-hand corner, I'll click Save Version. And you'll notice I now have an additional version here, version number 69. So notice the line underneath it has this highlighting across it. And this one also has that little word live. around it. That tells me that this version, number 68, is the one that's actually live on my live website. If I want to make a comparison between what's living in OU Campus and what's live, I can click the three little dots and compare the page. So I'm making a comparison right now between what lives inside OU Campus and what's on the live website. Anytime I see something green with that underline, that's text that has been added into OU Campus. Anything with a red strike through, that's text that has been removed from OU Campus. And anything with the blue text, that's text that exists in both, but inside OU Campus, the styling has somehow changed. So in this case, bold, underline, italicizing, all of those count as a change of formatting. Now let's say I'm looking at this comparison and I think, I don't like any of those changes that I made. I want to roll back to the live version of the page. Well, you can actually roll back to any version that has existed. So let's say looking at this page, I don't like anything that's in here. Let me roll back or revert to the way it looked on the live site. Clicking on the More Actions button, I just click revert and it'll roll back. I get my confirmation and my notification down here. So if I come back to edit, I can see all of those edits and adjustments that I made before have been removed. So we have another question here, again, talking about RSS feeds. I will make sure then to include that at the very end. I have a question here about, I don't have the three little dots. The three little dots for that More Actions menu are part of version 11. So if you're not seeing those three little dots, you're probably still in OU Campus version 10, which is fine. The functionality still exists. But the difference here would be when I'm in versions, in version 10, all I need to do is hover over the row and I'll see the same menu items. In version 11, we just hid them to make it a little bit of a cleaner interaction. But you'll see the exact same options if you hover over the row in version 10. Let's see. Will you please repeat what the blue text was when comparing? Absolutely. So when I make a comparison and I see any text that's blue, it means the text exists both inside OU Campus and on that version I'm comparing to. So in this case, on the live site, the difference is the formatting inside of OU Campus has changed. So let me illustrate that. So let's say I take this word and I bold it and I save. If I come back to versions and I do that comparison again to my live version, I'll compare my page. Notice the word mission is blue. So the word exists on the live website and it exists inside of OU Campus, but the formatting inside of OU Campus has changed. In this case, it's bolded. All right. Back over to my edit tab here. Let's talk about some common editing processes that you're probably going to be responsible for. So opening up this editable region, things that I often see people have to do are inserting images and inserting links. So let's talk about those. Right now I have an image over here on the right-hand side. Maybe I want to add a second image over here on the left. I want it to be kind of catty-cornered, book-ended, not sure what word I want there, but I want it to follow this process where I have the image on the side with the text next to it. So on this second paragraph, I want an image on the left with the text on the right. So I'm going to start by just placing my cursor to the right of this top line. And I have a little icon here in my toolbar. It kind of looks like a little sun with the mountains. That is my insert/edit image icon. So clicking on that, it'll bring me this pop-up, and this is where I can go choose my image. Source is the actual image I'm going to be choosing. So to the right of the source, I have a browse button. This allows me to go through OU Campus and find the image that I'm looking for. Now, my administrators set up a default image folder. So notice when I click that button, I have this breadcrumb up here that tells me I'm inside the site that is Galena. I'm inside a folder called _resources. I'm inside a folder called images. I'm inside a folder called campus. That's where I am right now. And then I have all of these images inside of it. So this drop-off location can be set by your administrators. So let's say I'm taking a look at these images. Media. So here I have a nice picture on the right. I get a preview of what that picture looks like. All right, I think this picture is looking good. This is the one I want to use. In the bottom right-hand corner, I'll click Insert. You're going to notice in this field here, I'm getting this weirdo text. It's double curly braces with a letter and a string of numbers. And that is a dependency tag. So OU Campus has a process running in the background that we call Dependency Manager. Dependency Manager essentially tracks relationships. So every piece of content inside of OU Campus, every web page, every image, every PDF file, all of it gets this unique ID number. And when you embed images, when you link to pages, when you link to documents, the system uses this unique ID to keep track of it. That's important in case I ever need to make changes or move the original file. So let's say I need to rename this file. Notice directly underneath my field, I do have the file path, so I can still confirm I grabbed the right image. But maybe I needed to rename this image. In other systems, if I change the name here, it would mean I need to go to every single page I put this picture on and manually change that as well, so that way you can always find the image. Using Dependency Manager, all of that happens automatically. So if I change the name of this image, every page where I place that image updates automatically. So I don't have broken images on my page. Question here, how do I insert a video and what is the limit weight of the video I can insert? Can you clarify for me what you mean by limit weight? But I can show you how to insert a video as soon as I finish this. So talking about our image here, if I tried to hit save right now, you're going to notice I get an error that tells me a description is required. This alternative description is used as the alt text on the image, and that's for accessibility purposes. When a screen reader comes to an image, the screen reader will read out this text. So this allows people with those assistive technologies to have an understanding of what the image is there for. When you're creating your alt text, you don't have to say it's an image of. The screen reader will already know that because of the HTML. I just have to describe it. So this is 3 students making a video. My title is essentially an additional little helper. So if I hover my mouse over the image on the web page, there'll be a little bit of text that pops up. Now, I like using the same thing in my alternative description as my image text here. And remember, all those keyboard shortcuts still work. And so Control-Command-C, I'm going to copy all of this text I just highlighted, and then here in the title, Control-Command-V to paste. I do have my width and height here. That's the original size of the image, but I can change the way it displays on this picture or on this particular page. So maybe I want to make this, say, 300. Notice that my height is going to update along with me. If you're in V10, you do need to click out of that box, but the height will still update as long as you have the constrained proportions turned on. If your particular design had custom classes for images or required an ID for the images, that's what these fields down here are for. My particular design does not, so I'm not going to use those. Okay, got clarification on the video. We will loop back to that. Over here on the left-hand side, my options here have moved. So in V10, I had tabs across the top. In V11, there are tabs on the side, but you should still see an advanced tab. The advanced tab allows me to make adjustments about how the image will appear on the page. You'll notice I have a little preview here, so I have a little tulip picture, and I can see right now the way everything is configured. Here's my text, but it's only lining up with the bottom of the image. I want it to actually fill in next to it. So what I'm going to do is adjust the alignment on it. I'm going to set the alignment to left. This will allow me to have the image floated to the left and all my text is filling in on the right. But I feel like this is it's a little squished. I would like a little spacing next to it. So I do have a field for horizontal space. I'm going to type the number 10. In V10, you do need to click out of that box in order for the preview to update. And this now gives me some nice spacing on either side. Notice I do have this style field here. These are, for your techie people, the CSS rules that are being applied in line to the image. For your non-techie people, you have all of these fields in order to be able to make those adjustments. So maybe I like the spacing on the right. I don't really want it on the left though. I'd rather have this image left justified. I'm going to, in this field, remove this whole rule that has to do with margin dash left. Again, you may need to click out of that box in version 10 in order to see the preview update. But notice now my image is left justified. I have some spacing on the right, and the text is filling in on the right-hand side. So that's looking good. Bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click Save. And perfect. I see my image placed here. We have a question. If the banner at the top of my page needs to be changed, can I do that, or does a higher level administrator need to do this? I don't see an edit button. So it depends is the answer to that question. We're going to talk about page parameters in just a little bit. The banner may be controlled there, but depending upon how your school set up their OU campus implementation, it may be something that an administrator needs to control. So keep an eye out when we talk about page parameters. That may answer your question, but if that does not, it would be an administrator you'd need to contact. Okay, so here's my image. If I allow my mouse to hover over it, there's the title that we created before. So clicking on this here, I can make adjustments to the image, even though I've already placed it on the page. So notice when I click on it, that insert/edit image icon gets that additional highlighting. Tells me I can reopen that. I'll be able to see all of the things that I've already filled in. So I can make adjustments here as necessary. So maybe the size wasn't the correct size. Maybe I actually want this to be a little bit bigger. I'll click on that, adjust that size, and hit save. So now my image is a little bit bigger. Still not quite the size I want. Maybe I want it to be even just a little bit larger than that. Notice when I have this image selected, I get the little bumpers on the corner. I can actually click and hold and drag to resize this image right here in the screen. So I don't need to know the exact number. I can simply make that adjustment right here on the screen. Okay, so there's images. We are still going to talk about links, but let me loop back and answer that question about video. So there are a couple of different ways to insert a video. For some of your implementations, you may have a special type of reusable content. We haven't talked about this yet. We will in just a little bit. But essentially, check with your administrators. They may have a special snippet, a special component that accepts the video. But if you're just dropping a video directly into this editable region, you do that using this button here. So in V11, when I hover over it, it says insert/edit media. In V10, it says insert/edit video. Either way, it's essentially the same functionality. So clicking on it here, I get that source field. If the video has been uploaded into OU Campus, I can go browsing for it. I don't think I have a video uploaded in here. So in that case, I can instead use a live URL to a video. So maybe you have a YouTube account and you want to grab videos from YouTube. So let's go to YouTube. Omni Update Training actually has a lovely channel here. So let's take a look at this video here. Who's that wonderful person who's doing a training? So what I'll do here is I'll literally just grab this URL. Back inside of OU Campus, I'm going to paste it in here and I'll hit save. In version 11, you'll see the video render here in the editing space. In version 10, you get a placeholder. So just be aware of that. You would need to save in order to see the video render itself. Now, I probably want this video centered in this space here. So I can use these text alignment fields in order to center that video. So I'm just going to place my cursor next to the video and hit center. So it'll center it right there. So that's how you would go ahead and get a video inside of OU Campus. The follow-up question was, what are the limits on the file size? Well, it really depends. If you are uploading the video into OU Campus, and again, we'll talk about upload a little bit later in this call, your administrators can set file upload limits on a per implementation basis. So check in with your administrators to find out what the limit was. If you are pulling a URL the way I did here in order to add the image in, then there is no limit because you're essentially just embedding the video on the page. It's not actually uploading into OU Campus. Okay, so there's videos for you. Let's talk about links. Linking to other things is probably something that you'll be doing. So let's say, for example, this word library, I want to link to another place. I'm going to click and hold and highlight the text itself. And then I'm going to click on this insert/edit link icon. Looks like little chain links. Clicking on that up at the top, I have a URL field. I'm going to use the exact same icon button, whether I'm linking to another page that's part of my website, or if I'm linking to something external. So let's say I'm linking to another page that is part of my website, so it's managed inside of OU Campus. In that case, I'm going to click on that little browse button, and it'll allow me to look through OU Campus. So notice right now, I'm landing inside the academics folder. When I go to choose a link, it's going to start me at the same level where my current page is. Hey, there's my library page. That's where I am right now. If the other page I want to link to is right here, I could click on that particular page here. Notice you get a little preview on the right-hand side. So I can do a quick check to make sure I grab the right page. If I need to go up in my folder structure, notice the breadcrumbs are clickable links. So I'm going to go one level up and I'll click on Galena. This is the root of my site. So this is the top level inside of this site. And I know that because I have the little house up at the top. So from here, I can scroll to find the folder that I want. Notice all these folders are clickable links. So I'll click on that. And so maybe I want to link to this clubs page here. I'll scroll, check, make sure, yep, that's the page that I wanted. Bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click insert. Again, I see that dependency tag is being added here. But again, I still have the file path underneath, so I can confirm, yep, that's the clubs page. Text to display is going to be the actual words on the page that are the link. Because we highlighted the text and then click this icon, it's already going to pull that text over into this field. So that's already set up for me. Title, just like when we were talking about images before, if I hover over this link, this will be a little bit of text that pops up, a little helper. So I like to use the title on a link to explain where you're about to go if you click here. So this is going to bring you to the Galena University clubs page. My next option here has to do with the target, or how I want this link to open. Opening in the current window means in the exact same tab, the exact same window, that's how this link will open. That is the ideal choice when I'm linking to other pages inside my website, because essentially I'm just moving here from one page to another. I'm still on the website. If I were linking to something external, so a different website, a different domain, something like that, then I'd want to choose new window. In that case, the link will open in a new tab or a new window, depending upon what browser the web visitor is on, and my website will stay on its original tab. Because this is another page inside of Galena University's website, I'll keep it as current window. Again, I have a class option down here. This is if your website design included classes for links. So I do often see schools will have like button classes or special styling for different types of links. If you have that, you'd be able to choose the class here. My sandbox does not have anything like that, so I'm just going to skip over those. I'll go ahead and hit save. So you can see for my website design, the styling for a basic link is that light blue color. So exact same process that I would follow if I was going to link out to an external page. So let's say this word works. I want to link to somewhere external. I'll go ahead and click on that insert/edit link icon again. And this time I'm going to put the URL into the field. So maybe I want to link to FAFSA.gov here. FAFSA. Ooh, that's the capsule. Again, my text to display is the word that will actually be the link. My title here. So if you click on this link, this will take you to the FAFSA website. Because this is off-site, I'm going to switch this to new window. So when I click on it, my website will remain in its current window, and this will open separately. Now, when I hit save here, I am going to get a little pop-up warning. That is expected. Ooh, where did my pop-up warning go? Interesting. Okay, that I'm going to make a note of, because here's what will happen in V10. When I click save on something like this, it's going to look at the link and realize, ooh, this is a web address. This is something that needs to be fully qualified. And when I say fully qualified, I mean it needs the HTTP or the HTTPS:// at the beginning. OU Campus V10 will automatically do that. I'm going to make a note here just so that way our QA team can take a look at that. I'm going to find a pen that works, and then I'm going to make a note here so they can take a look at that. So it's important for any external links to be fully qualified to make sure that that link works appropriately. So I'm just going to manually add here the HTTP:// and I'll go ahead and save. Perfect. The last type of link that you may be responsible for making is a mail to link. So down here at the bottom, my last sentence is saying, for more information about the GU library, contact the campus librarian. Maybe I don't want this at this web address. I want the words campus librarian to actually be the clickable link for sending that email. So in that case, what I do is I'm going to take this email address. I'm going to cut for Control or Command X, which essentially removes it and puts it onto my clipboard. I'm going to turn these words into a mail to link. So again, I'm going to click and hold and highlight the words. And I have a new icon for this one. Looks like the little envelope. Clicking on that allows me to add the email address. Control or Command V will allow me to paste that email address that I had cut before. And I can even add a subject line. So info about GU library. There we go. Again, my classes here, if your website included classes for mail to links, you could have that set up here and you choose it. Mine does not, so I'll just go ahead and click OK. Perfect. So now I have my link set up there. All right, so that walks us through inserting images, inserting videos, and inserting links. Let's talk about a little bit more of kind of the special things that are inside of this editor itself. And I want to start by talking about this cutting and pasting that I've been doing already, but I want to really specify it for you guys. So let's say I had some content in here that had formatting already, so maybe a bulleted list. So this is item 1, item 2, item 3. I can use my keyboard shortcuts, or I have icons up here that allow me to copy and paste this content. But the icons here may be blocked by my browser. So I'm currently in Chrome. Chrome has a safety precaution inside of any application that runs on it that essentially stops any applications from reaching into your computer. That's good. That's important. I don't want random applications reaching into my computer. But that includes my clipboard where these buttons would work. So let's say I want to use these buttons. I can go ahead and copy the content. And then over here, I'm going to hit enter a couple of times, and I'm going to try to paste it. There's my message that tells me my browser isn't going to support it, but it will tell me how I can using my keyboard shortcuts. So I'm on a Mac right now, which is why you see that command. If you were on a PC, you would say Control instead. So I can still paste. I just need to use Control or Command V to paste. Cut, as we saw before, does work. So Control or Command C is copy. Control or Command V is paste. Control or Command X is cut. And then here's the special one, Command or Control plus Shift plus V allows me to paste as plain text. So if I'm bringing something over and it has a whole bunch of formatting on it and I just want to get rid of all the formatting and keep the text, that controller command Shift V allows me to paste it without that styling. So notice it came in now without the bulleted list. So all of those are possible inside of OU Campus. All right, other things that are important to be aware of inside of the editor. I do have a spell check here. Now, the spell check is a static check, meaning it will check when I first click the button. So let's say I have some misspelled words here. When I click the spell check, it'll go through and it'll add that highlighting to let me know which words are misspelled. Now, it's only going to assess it when I click the button. So if I kept typing, ooh, no, you like it. Yeah, there we go. So if I kept typing somewhere and the button had already been clicked, it won't immediately recognize those are misspelled words. I'd need to turn it off and turn it back on for it to find those words. So the moral of the story on the spell check inside the editor is add the text in first, do the spell check after you have the text in here. Or remember, you can do that page check. That'll check the text on the page too. All right. Last thing about the toolbar before we get into reusable content has to do with your saving options. So you do have an icon here that's a little floppy disk that allow you to save and exit the region. In V11, you also have the save button up at the top. I have the X, which allows me to exit without saving. So if I open this region and started to type and realized, nah, I don't want any of that, clicking that X allows me to exit without saving any of the content. The next button here is Restore Last Draft. This is super helpful. So let's say, for example, I've done all of these edits, I've made all these changes, I've done a lot of work here, but I haven't saved anything yet. And then suddenly my internet goes down, my computer goes down, I kicked out the plug, the world exploded, I accidentally refreshed my page. Any of those things are going to kick me out of the editor, and notice all of those edits that I just did are gone. Open up the region again. This Restore Last Draft will hold on to any unsaved edits for about 20 minutes. So if any of those catastrophic things happen, clicking on that will bring them back. So that's one of my favorite things, just because I do have that habit of accidentally refreshing pages. Now, if you want to save as you're going, rather than saving and exiting the region, remember your keyboard shortcuts work. So as long as your cursor is inside this editable region, Controller Command S will save where you are. Notice I get my little save notification there. So you can still save as you go without actually exiting the region itself. All right, let's talk about reusable content. So all of the editing we've done so far is using the basic toolbar. But we do have pieces of reusable content that allow you to grab really design elements or things that are a little bit more complex and place them into pages. And there are three types of reusable content. It's this little group of icons over here. So starting all the way on the left, I have a little puzzle piece icon. This is a snippet. Snippets are design elements or fancy design output that is part of the website design that would be really tricky to edit as we're editing text inside the editable region. So more often than not, when we set up a snippet, when you edit it, you'll have a table. Let me show you. Clicking on that insert/edit snippet, up here at the top of my Choose Snippets box, I have the ability to select the category. This is super important. Your snippets are going to be separated into categories, and that's really based upon where that design element was intended to be placed. So let's say, for example, you have a statistics design element and it has these big numbers with text underneath it and icons, and it looks great. And the plan was always, this will live on the home page. I don't want it on any of the other pages because I want this big call out on the home page. So you may have a category called homepage, and that's where that particular snippet is categorized. If you tried to place it on one of the other pages inside your site, it may not render correctly because only the home page has all of the necessary styling to make it look good. So when you are choosing a snippet for your page, make sure you're matching to the page type that you're currently on. Often your typical pages are going to be called something like an interior page, a generic category, which is what I have here. I often see done as well, but that may be unique to your particular OU Campus instance. So if you have any questions, make sure you contact your administrator and they'll be able to give you some more information about which categories are appropriate. So filtering by generic, I'm going to see here are the list of different snippets that are available to me, and I'm going to choose this top one of the accordion. The bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click Insert, and you're going to notice inside this editable region, it literally does look like a table. I have little helper text that tells me what I'm supposed to put inside each one of these cells. So maybe for this heading 1, I'm going to take out the filler text. I'm going to call this Barbara's accordion heading. And then for the content here, I'll put in this is the content that Barbara had. So I make my edits inside the table itself. In order to see the final rendered version, I am going to save and exit. So again, the floppy disk or that save button up at the top. And if I scroll down here, there's my accordion. The content that had been placed inside the individual table cells is going to be pulled and placed into the appropriate places right here inside of this rendered view. Back inside my editable region, and I'm scrolling down, it's the table again. So again, I can make edits and changes as necessary. It is a table, so if I needed to add additional columns, I can. Inside of version 11, I do have all of these nice little pop-up buttons that allow me to add or remove different cells and rows and things like that. In version 10, if you right-click on the table, you have different abilities for column, row, cell, and things like that. So you do have access to those things. You just need to do the right-click in order to get to it. So if I wanted to add an additional row here in either version, if I'm in that last row, I can just hit Tab, just like you would with any table editing. So this is going to be heading row 4. Here's the content, added for row 4. And we'll save and exit. So depending upon how your design elements work, some of your design elements may accept this adding additional rows, some may not. So again, if you have questions, contact your school administrator. The next type of reusable content I want to talk to you guys about are assets. And I'm actually going to open up this side content region just so I can show you we have more than one region on the page. My particular design has 2 spaces where I can make edits and changes. So over here on the left-hand side, I click on that button. Again, it opens up the space. Again, I see it highlighted with the whole background, so I know exactly where it is on the page. And in here, I'm going to add an asset. So this next icon over, it looks like a set of arrows moving in a square. These are my assets. Clicking on that is going to allow me to filter. So I have a bunch of assets in here, and I can filter by all sorts of different things. So inside OU Campus, you can tag content, makes it easier to search for later. So in my instance, I do have a whole bunch of tags here. I can filter by type of asset, and there are essentially 5 different types we have here. Or I can filter by name if I have an idea of what the name should be. So for our particular setup here, if I go to all types, I want to look for source code, because what I want to do is I want to drop in a Twitter feed. So I have my Twitter feed here, and it literally is a chunk of code. It is a code block, but the nice thing about assets is when I drop an asset on the page, I as the editor can't make changes to it. These are set up either by people who are managing the assets or your administrators, and these are going to be locked in. I put them on the page, and there they will stay. Now, the nice thing about using assets is they all still stay connected to the original asset. So if an update needs to be made in the future, it can be done. So let's say I have this Twitter feed and it's on 17 different pages across my site, and I don't want to remember where all those pages are. If I need to change this source code, so maybe I want to switch it from the light background to the dark background, all I need to do is make that adjustment in the one original asset, and that change will sprinkle down to every page that I put it on. So I don't have to dig through all of it. It's all contained. So bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click Insert. And this will allow me to put that asset on the page. And you're going to look at that and say, that is an ugly Twitter feed. Accurate. When I put an asset inside an editable region, I get this placeholder. If it's selected, it's a hash green box. If I deselect it, it's a hash gray box. But either way, it's just an acknowledgement. It's saying, yes, you've placed an asset here, but no, you can't edit it here. It is going to be included on my rendered page, but I just can't make edits to it. In order to see a preview, I'm going to go ahead and save and exit. And you'll see there's my Twitter feed. Gets pushed down. A very long Twitter feed. We tweet a lot. There you go. All right, so I have a question that's asking, is there an undo button to undo one specific task versus unsave the whole changes? Yes, but you have to have the region open. So let's open up that editable region here. When I first open it, it essentially creates a new session. So I do have undo, redo buttons here. So in order for me to undo a particular action, I need to have not closed this region. But if I do make some changes, so I'll add in some text, maybe I'll delete out this picture. Sure, we're gonna move that, yes. I do have the undo, which will allow me to go through and bring all those things back. And I do have the redo. So those things are available. It is also available through keyboard shortcuts. So that is controller command Z and control and command Y is undo redo. But again, as soon as I save and exit this region, the session has closed. So I lose the history of the undo redo. There's a question here about how do you create an RSS asset? So a little bit later in this call, we are going to talk about creating assets in general. RSS assets are unique because you essentially need not just the placeholder on the page itself, but you need a server-side script that understands how to parse through the RSS feed and make a listing. So it really is a two-part process. So we'll talk about creating assets, but when we talk a little bit more about RSS feeds, because we got a couple of requests for those later on in this call, I'll talk a little bit more about how that scripting works. Okay, the last type of reusable content that we have is a component. Components have this little icon, kind of looks like this atom symbol here. When I click on that, I'll be able to see my components that are available. Again, these are associated with design elements. So it'll be something on my page that has a design that would be more difficult to edit in just the text view the way that we've been doing it before. But the nice thing about components is that it prompts me with a list of form fields. So you can be really well kind of directed to what questions you're answering here. So let's go ahead and choose that faculty spotlight. I'll click insert. It's gonna ask me for my faculty name. That's not my name, good try. My department, my title. What inspires me? Mostly kittens and occasionally cheese. This is giving me the ability to add a faculty picture. So browsing for that image, let's see, inside resources, inside images, I'm just browsing through my folder structure here. Yeah, I did include my lovely smiling face. I'll go ahead and insert that. And then again here for alt text. So notice right now, the way this component was set up, the alt text is optional. Your administrators could set it up so that is a required field for accessibility purposes. I'll go ahead and hit save. Now, when a component is added inside your editable region, you may see a placeholder, the way we see it here. So if I click on that placeholder, the pencil will open up the fields again so I can make edits. And the X allows me to delete it out of this page. But you may also see a preview of what it looks like. In that case, you will see a previewed render here. But again, same process, you click on the previewed render to see those buttons. For my purposes, in order to see the render itself, I can hit that save and exit or the save at the top of my screen. And there is my faculty spotlight. Whew. All right, so those are our different types of reusable content. Excellent. So we've made a bunch of changes to this page. I think everything looks beautiful and great. Let's publish it. Publishing it will take all these changes and push them out to my production server. So the live website will now get updated. Hitting publish, again, you're going to see the exact same checks we saw before on the page check. So depending upon how your administrators have it set up, these may be optional and you can choose them, or they may run automatically. So that's all dependent upon how the administrator has it set up. Whenever I publish a page, it is going to ask me for a version description. And I highly recommend using the version description. We saw that version list before. If this is a page that gets updated regularly, I will literally have hundreds of different versions in here. And it gets really, really difficult to figure out which version's which without a description. So I do highly recommend adding a description. So let's go ahead and add in our description here. So I'm going to say, made lots of edits to this page. Bottom right hand corner, I'm going to click publish. I'll see my status bar at the bottom. When the file publishes through, it will provide me with a link that says view a new window. This allows me to open this page on my live website, so I can then go to see, oh, here are all the changes that we made. Perfect. So you can always have that additional confirmation. All right, back inside of OU Campus, we had a question here that was asking, what is the difference between a snippet and a component? The final rendered version, there is no difference. So both snippets and components allow you to have a complex design element and make it easier to edit inside the editable region. Snippets can be done using a table transformation where you literally have table cells. Components are done using form fields. So you are prompted with a bunch of form fields. So the question really at that point is, what's the benefit of using one over the other? The benefit of using a component is that you can create components with just HTML code. So if you have someone in your institution who is a web designer or does web development, they could create a component using just HTML. But it's locked in on the code itself. So I can't have any adjustable displays. It will always be like this. So for my faculty spotlight, my picture is going to be on the right-hand side. I can't add additional fields about what inspires me. It is locked into what that code output will be. Snippets give you a little bit more flexibility. So remember how we added that extra row down here on the snippet? Because it's a snippet, it uses XSL in the background in order to assess it and then create the design. So in instances like accordions or different cards, sometimes I've seen sliders that use this snippet. This allows you to just add additional rows to create a new piece. That is really the primary difference between them from an editing perspective. From an administration perspective, components allow your administrators to make sweeping changes. So once I put an accordion on the page, that's it. The accordion is on just this page. The component still links back to its original code. So let's say at some point in the future, the school decided this is italicized, we don't want it to be italicized anymore. They could go to the original component code and remove that italicization. And then that would allow all of the pages inside OU Campus to update. It still needs to get published in order to push to the live site, but it is still linked back to the original component code. So allow me to summarize that because that was a lot of information. From an editing experience, it's the difference between making edits in a table with a snippet or using form fields with a component. Snippets allow you to create repeatable content like accordion rows. Components allow your administrators to make changes to everywhere it has been placed. Perfect. Okay, so we have our page published. I opened up the editable region with checked back out. So let's do a quick publish again so I can prove to you. Publish again. Watch the light bulb turns off. It's the only time when a page is automatically checked back into the system. The assumption here is really just you have published your page, you're probably done with it. There it goes. My department faculty page says it doesn't exist. How do I create a page linked to my department main page that has profile links to all 4 department faculty members? That is a lot of questions right there. We're going to talk about creating new pages in just a little bit. Linking to the main department page, if you're linking inside the content area, you'd use the same process we talked about linking, but I think you might be talking about side navigation, which again, we'll talk about in just a little bit. So I think we're going to touch upon some of the questions you're asking there, but I will loop back with you just to make sure that everything makes sense for your particular instance. So I'll send you an email after we're done here. Okay. There are some things that are on this page that are not inside of an editable region. So you're going to notice the header across the top, that big H1, my library, the side navigation, and all the way down past Twitter, my footer at the bottom. Not everything is inside an editable region. There are going to be some pieces here that are edited in other places. So if it's something that's page unique, like the page heading, that's probably still going to be associated with this file, but it's just not an editable region. And that's where we start getting into page parameters. So as long as the page is checked out to me, when I click on properties, my top option is going to say parameters. If the page is not checked out to me, parameters did not exist. So it doesn't need to be checked out for you to see parameters. Parameters are a set of form fields that have control over the page. You do need to be a level 5 or above in order to see page parameters. So if your user is lower than that, you won't have access to this realm. Up at the top, I do have my title and meta description or metadata here. So description, keywords, things that are used for SEO purposes. And then I have custom settings. What questions appear here is completely based upon your school's instance. So what is the design? What page requirements are there? What type of page is it? So you will have different questions that I have here, and each of your pages may even have different questions. Page heading is that displayed heading that we have at the top. So if I wanted to change this, maybe I want this to be the McQuillan library. I'll go ahead and make that change. In OU Campus V10, your save is on the bottom, and V11, it's up at the top. So I'll go ahead and hit save, and there we go, McQuillan library. Now, clicking on properties to see parameters totally works. There is no issue with that. I like to be able to see the page while I'm making adjustments to my parameters. So we have a gadget for that. Click that little plug icon. I do have a page parameters gadget here. The listing here is customizable to you. So you can hide or make visible gadgets as you guys see fit, but I can also rearrange them. So I like to take whichever gadget I'm currently using and pull it up to the top. It just makes it easier for me to see. So I'll go ahead and open up my page parameters. It is the exact same fields we saw in that other field. Now I just get a nice side-by-side view. So scrolling down, I have some different options for things that I can turn on and off. You're going to see my left column is currently turned on, and different things are turned on and off in it. Ooh, this particular page has the option of a right column. Let's go ahead and turn that on, and I'll hit save. So now my page is actually 3 different columns. If I go into edit view, I'll be able to see, ooh, I have even more editable regions that I can adjust and play with. So adjusting the layout of the page is often something that's controlled inside page parameters. So if you need to switch from a 1 column to a 2 column or something like that, if your design supports it, you're probably going to see it in page parameters. All right, I'll hit X to close my gadget sidebar. Let's talk about those other things that are visible on the page, but I can't edit them here, including side navigation. Side navigation is going to be content that is shared by every page inside of this section. So normally, whatever links you have here point to the other pages inside of this section. So you want to make sure that they're all matching perfectly. For most implementations, That means instead of editing on every single page, we'll create an include file for you. So I need to get back to actually browsing through the files inside of OU Campus. We haven't browsed anywhere yet. We've only been on this one page. So let's browse through OU Campus. And there are two different ways I can get there. Hovering over content in version 10, I have to click on it in version 11. My top option here is pages. I can also click the back two pages here, or in version 10, there is a pages breadcrumb. That's a link itself. Any of those options are going to get you to the listing. This is the folder file structure. So inside of OU Campus, my pages are set up inside folders, and then I have individual files. There's my library page. Here are the other pages that are part of the section. And you're going to notice here, I do have a side Nav Dot Inc file. This is where my site navigation is being controlled for my instance. If you don't see this file, check with your school administrators because your setup might be a little bit different. Opening up that file, we're going to see in here, I do have the different links already set up here. Now, for most of your editing purposes, you won't actually need to come here and make edits unless you're maybe changing the title of a page and you want to come over here and change it as well. So let's say for this library, I want to change it so it says McQuillan Library. I'm going to click on the link because these are links to other pages, and I'm going to adjust my text to display. So I'll make this say McQuillan Library. Bottom right hand corner, save. Now remember, this change is only inside of OU Campus. In order to make this live, I do need to publish this file. Ooh, I didn't save. I am getting the option here to save before I do, so that was very nice. Go OU Campus. We'll save, and then we'll publish. So we just did library name. Perfect. So now that change has been pushed out. I don't need to publish anything else because this is an include file. All of my live pages automatically go looking for it. So if I just open one of those other tabs that I'd opened previously, and I do a quick refresh, there it is, McQuillan Library. So I can make adjustments and changes to that side navigation there. Back to my tab for OU Campus. Question here, what is the best practice about filing images? Should they be associated with relevant departments or offices, or should they all live under the main images folder? That's an excellent question. Let's segue at this point into talking about uploading files, because it'll talk about uploading images. So back to content pages. The answer to your question really is, it depends. I've seen some smaller schools who have a single folder that has all images in it. And everyone who is a user inside OU Campus has access to it, and everybody respects everybody's other's images, and nobody ever trounces or deletes or adjusts or accidentally does anything with anybody others, and it's all fine and everybody gets along fine. I've seen some schools who have a single images folder, maybe at the root of the site. So clicking on my little house here will take me to the root. This is the top level. So I've seen some schools who put a folder right here, call it images. And then inside of that folder, they have separate folders for each individual department. That way they can set access on each one of those folders. So only the business users can get into the business folder. I've seen some schools where they'll put a folder directly into this folder here. So right now I'm inside academics. I can place a folder right here and call it images. And then that way everyone in here that has access to the academic section will have access to the images. I'd say from an administrative standpoint, this last setup is the easiest if you do need to separate out which images go to which department. If everybody's just fine and dandy all being together in one big chunk, you can throw a singular images folder at the root of your site. But I find most schools that I work with do some sort of distinction where each department has their old images folder. So let's talk about how you would create that folder. And that'll segue us into making new content too. Up here at the top of my screen, I do have this plus new button here. Clicking plus new will give me the selection of templates that are available to me. So these are all of the almost like page wizard experiences. In order to store pieces of content that I'm going to use in other places, such as images, PDFs, documents, things like that, I want to create a folder. A folder is just for organizational purposes. So I'm going to create this folder. I'm going to call it images. Create. And literally that's all it is. There's nothing in here yet. So let's go ahead and upload some images. And there are a couple of different ways I can do it. I can click this upload button here. And from here, I can hit +add and it allows me to browse my folder structure. So here are my different images. I can choose multiple of them by holding Control or Command as I'm browsing through. Bottom right-hand corner, I'll click Open. And I'll see my listing here. Now, if there are any errors, I'll see them immediately here. So for example, this Yosemite picture is too big. My administrators have set a limit on the size of images that I can upload. It looks like it is 1,000 kilobytes here, and this is 7.4 megabytes. Yeah, it's pretty big. So this one I cannot upload as is right now. So that's what that red text is in the error message. So hovering over it in V10 or clicking on the more actions, I can remove it. So it's not part of my queue anymore. So I don't have that error message. And I can just hit start upload and it'll go ahead and add these images here. If I do need to get that Yosemite picture in, but it's just too big, I can actually edit it while I'm uploading it. So let's click upload again. I'm going to choose this option to edit and upload image. Inside OU Campus, you have basic editing options. You can edit it while you upload, as I'm going to show you now, or if I click into any of these images that I've uploaded here, I go straight to the edit screen anyway. So let's see if it's going to let me open. Yep, it'll take me straight to the editor as it tries to upload that giganto image. Home internet. There it is. Yeah, this is a huge image. So this is just way too big. It absolutely bypasses the size that I'm allowed to upload. So what I can do here inside my editor is resize it. So let's make it 1/10 of that size. So I'll make it 500 by 400. Notice again, as long as preserve ratio is checked, these will align themselves so I keep the same aspect ratio, and I'll click resize. Oh, much smaller. And look, no more warning. So I can upload those images using that edit image, edit and upload at the same time. So I can make it smaller so it fits into the size requirements. I do have other options here with my editing. I can crop and I can rotate. So if you take pictures on like a camera, and sometimes it's landscape and sometimes it's portrait, you can rotate them in here just so that way it all lines up appropriately. In the bottom corner here, I do have the option to upload or cancel. So I'm going to go ahead and upload. It'll allow me to choose where I want it to go, and I'll just hit save. Now, for any of those other pictures that I already uploaded, I can edit those as well. So let's open the bridge photo. So let's make a change here. Maybe we'll crop it out a little bit. And in order to apply that change, I do have to click apply crop. Good. Notice down at the bottom, I have different buttons here. That's just because I've already uploaded this image and now I'm making changes to it as it lives inside of OU Campus. If I hit cancel, it would undo all the changes that I just made. If I hit save as, this will allow me to save these changes as a new file and I keep the original file. And save will overwrite over the original file. So I'll just go ahead and hit save. Perfect. All right. So I now have these 3 files uploaded here. I can drag and drop images as well. Let's see if we can get my file folder here. Let's get to my sample images. So I can drag and drop. So if I click and hold on an image and go to drag it in, notice in V11, I get the little blue outline dash. In V10, I'll get a green highlighting around. And if I just drop it in, it'll just upload there. So I don't even have to go through that upload. I can just drag and drop. All of these files have been uploaded inside of OU Campus. They are not yet on the production server. So if I tried to put them on a page right now, it would look broken because your live website doesn't have access to them. So I do need to publish these out. As a level 8, I can select multiple of them at the same time, but you may need to go inside each one and publish it. But I will select them all here, and I'll just publish them all out. Notice that one of them is checked out to me. So if I just try to publish as is, uploaded new, I do get a little note here that says one file couldn't be published. And if I view the details, it tells me it's because it's checked out. It's another one of the safety precautions inside of OU Campus. So if a file is checked out, I can't automatically publish it out from a view like this. This is just to make sure it is not in the process of being edited. So I could check it back in, and we can publish it again. All right, so you would follow the exact same process if you're uploading PDFs, documents, PowerPoints, anything else like that, same process. You could drag and drop into the appropriate folder, or you can click upload and choose the appropriate folder. Okay, I think that goes through all of the questions that we had on images. Yes. All right, let's talk a little bit more about creating new things. So I'm going to go up one level to this academics folder. So I can see there's that images folder that I created. Creating new content is done simply by hitting this plus new button. Which templates you see here are completely dependent upon your school's instance and your website design. So you may have more, you may have less. It's totally dependent upon the design of your website and how OU Campus was configured. So for our purposes here, maybe I'm going to go ahead and create a 3-column page. When I click on one of these, I'll be presented with form fields, and I'll fill this information out and it'll get passed to the new page that I'm about to create. What questions you have on this page, again, completely dependent upon your OU Campus instance, your website design. So for the page title here, I'm just going to call this example page. This description here is for search engines. So this is my meta description for SEO purposes. I'll give it a file name. I'm going to call it example dash page and watch the helper text. So for any time you're filling out a form field inside of OU Campus, helper text can be configured by your administrators. This is where they're going to give you information about what should be entered into this particular field. So for my file name here, notice it's telling me lowercase letters, underscores, or dashes only. So no spaces, no capital letters. It's a good piece of information, especially as you're first getting into OU Campus. Read those helper texts. It'll help you to put in appropriate information so you're not just erroring every single time you try to do something. I have an option here called Add Navigation Item. I do see most of our schools include this as an option, but again, yours might be different. If it does, Add Navigation Item essentially allows OU Campus to automatically add a link to this page into the site navigation. So I don't have to manually go and do it. By leaving this set to yes, it'll do it automatically. I usually recommend to leave that set to yes. And then override is simply because of the user level that I'm in. If a file called example-page already existed, clicking that would allow me to overwrite it. Bottom right-hand corner, I'll click create. Perfect. So here I am on my page. I have all of my content regions here all set up and ready to go. I start adding content, making my edits, and there it is. So let's say I've added all my content. Everything looks perfect. I'm all ready. Let me go ahead and hit publish. So my version description here is going to be created new, and I'll publish it out. Let's view it in a new window. So this is the live version of that page, and I want to point out the side navigation. Notice example page is not included on the side navigation. Well, we chose the option to have it automatically added. It is added inside OU Campus, but that side navigation file needs to get published. And here's why. When I first create a new page, I'm probably not ready for the world to see it yet. I probably want to give myself a little bit of time to edit it, make changes, publish it out, make sure it looks good, decide I don't like it, go back and make more changes before I add it onto that side navigation so the web visitors can link to it. So once I decide, okay, I'm ready, this is finally ready, let's do it. Back inside OU Campus, back to my pages list. Let's open up that side navigation again. There it is. It was automatically added to the side navigation. It's just waiting for you to be ready. All right, I'm ready. We'll publish it. We added the example page. Bottom right-hand corner, publish. Perfect. So back to my live page, quick refresh. There it is. Now the web visitors are going to see that in the side navigation and they can get to this page. So that's the process of creating new pages inside of OU Campus. Let's go back to our pages list because there's one more new thing that I want to show you how to create from this plus new experience, and that is a section. I have a special template here called new section. We'll come back. No, we'll talk about that. Okay, so we have a question here that says, how do you delete things from the Nav Dot Inc? So it's just a file that you're editing. So let's come back in here. Let's say I decided I don't want study abroad. I'll literally just delete it out. The vast majority of side navigations or nav.inc files that you'll have usually are going to be a bulleted list, kind of similar to what we saw a moment ago while it was loading. So all you need to do is remove that particular bullet, save, and publish. Back to my left page, refresh. No more study abroad. So you'd edit it the same way you edit any of your other files, just remove that bulleted item and publish it out. Okay, back over to talking about sections. When I hit plus new, you're going to notice that I have this special template called new section. You're going to notice it kind of looks like a folder. The folder up here at the top, create new folder, is only for organizational purposes. It's for putting images and PDFs and documents into one place so you can find them easily when you're linking to them. If you're planning on creating a new section of your site and there will be web pages in it, you want to use a new section template. And it's because most school implementations need little helper files in order for the pages to work correctly. For my design, it's this side nav. If that file doesn't exist, my pages won't render correctly. I'll end up with a broken chunk on my page. Different implementations may have even more of these little helper files. We usually have them as a underscore and then a file name at the top. Those little helper files are required for your pages to render correctly. If I use this new section template, it will automatically create those little helper files along with the section itself. So it's to make sure that all of your web pages work appropriately. So let's go ahead and click on that new section and we'll go ahead and set this up. So my directory name, this is going to be a watch those helper text. No special characters, no spaces. I'm going to call this new dash section. When I create the section, it'll make the folder. It'll put the helper files inside of it, and it creates a page called index.pcf. It may create a file called default.pcf. It depends upon how your instance is configured. It's usually index. This is going to be essentially the landing page for the section. So these questions that I have here are questions about that landing page. So it's going to be the new section landing page. Again, this may be unique to your implementation, so check with your administrators to find out if you're getting a special page type created when you create the new section. Again, description is for SEO purposes. Add navigation item will add this section to that higher level navigation so I can make sure that it is linked for the live website. Bottom right hand corner, create. I'm going to be dropped onto my index page. Here we are again, main content in the content region. I can make my edits and changes. back to my pages list. Here we are inside of new section. It created the index page. It created its side navigation file. If I go up one level, there's that top level folder that contains everything inside of it. So if you're putting web pages into it, use a new section. If you're using just for organizational purposes like images, you can use create new folder. To get everything published out, I want to publish everything inside of this new section. And I want to publish the navigation file at the level where I hit plus new. This is to make sure all of my navigation continues to link appropriately as it goes down the list. Some of your websites may have nested navigation where you see multiple levels inside your side navigation. This is an important step to make sure it works. So make sure you publish the side navigation at the level where you hit plus new. That'll make sure everything goes out appropriately. Okay, so we talked about this, we talked about that. Good, good, good. Uploading images. All right, let's get back to those questions about creating assets, and that'll kind of segue us into RSS. So depending upon your user permissions and accessibilities, under content, you may have the option of assets. This brings you to the asset manager. This is the location where assets can be created and you can edit them. So my particular user does have access to this space. So let me show you how you would create a new asset. Clicking on there, I'm going to see the listing of all the assets that currently exist. And in the upper right-hand corner here, I'm going to go ahead and hit plus new. And I'm going to create a new web content asset. Web content assets are chunks of content where I can pre-create styling. So I could add images, I could add links, I could do formatting in it. All of that can be controlled inside the asset itself. Plain text, literally just plain text. When I drop it on the page, it'll look at the styling all around it to decide how it should be styled. Source code we saw before when we were looking at that Twitter feed, it is literally a chunk of code. Source code we often use for listing. So like the RSS feed, the RSS asset, it's usually going to be a source code asset. Your image galleries are going to be a selection of different images that are going to be displayed in a nice way, slider, thumbnail, something like that. That'll depend upon how your website design is set up for displaying galleries. And then finally, forms allow you to create a form. So you can have a set of questions, a survey, something like that, that you can add onto your pages. So we'll create a web content asset here. Up at the top, it's going to ask me for a name. Any of the fields that are bolded here are required. So I'm just going to call this Barbara's web content. The description is for my editors. So when I go to insert this asset on the page, I'll be able to see the description. So my editors will understand, ooh, that's what this is for. So I can add a description here that just says for training purposes only. And I can add some tags. This will make it easier for me to search for later. So I like using tags when the asset is specifically for a particular department. So maybe this asset is just for the training department. I can tag it as training, and this will allow all of those editors to filter by training. So it's nice and easy for them to find it. Lock to site is really going to be applicable when you have multiple sites in your account. So if your school has a College of Business site and a college or architecture site, and you have an asset that is only for one of them, you could build it on their site and just click lock to site. So the other department won't be able to see it on that separate site. Continue down in access settings. I have two settings here. Access group is the group that can edit it. So who's allowed to come in here and actually make edits and changes to this asset? Available to is the group who can actually use it on their pages. So who can go onto their pages and actually add this particular asset into their page content. And then down here at the bottom, I'm going to go ahead and add my content. So this is the content Barbara added web content asset. And then I do have a mini Wysiwyg editor here that allows me to add some styling. So we'll bold it. I'm going to underline it. I can add links, images, videos. Any of those things could be pre-created here. I'm going to go ahead and hit create. And like most things inside OU Campus, in order to use it on my live site, I do have to hit publish. Publishing it out, I'll use a version description created new, publish. Perfect. Now it's available to be placed on one of my pages. So let's come back to content pages. Let's go ahead and open up that example page that we had created. We'll open up that main content region and we'll insert the asset. Remember, asset icon is a set of arrows moving in a square. And this time I'm going to filter by tag. Let's find that training tag. And there it is. Any of the assets that have been given that tag get filtered down. There is my asset. I'll see the preview on the right-hand side, and there's my description. Ooh, for training purposes only. I'll hit insert. Again, I get the placeholder here and save. Perfect. My button is pushing my text over a little bit, so let's see it in preview so I can see it pushed out appropriately. So if I needed to make adjustments, changes on this, I could go back to my asset. I'll open that again. I'm going to click on the light bulb so I have the option to edit it. I need to own it in order to edit it. So here it is. Maybe I'll say more content here. I'm going to save it and I'm going to publish it. Publishing this out will update all the pages that have in it, and if they're live, it'll publish them out too. So my live pages will get that update. So let's come over here. There's my example page. I published it out before. This is the live version of it. I didn't have the asset on it. Oh, come back here. Back to content pages. Let's just look at my example page. There it is. More content here. So it'll update it and push it out. So we have it all set up there. All right, so we have a question here about, can you insert a form PDF under forms asset? Are you talking about uploading files into the form? I'll give you a moment to type. So if you are asking about uploading files, it is possible. We have a new form element. So yes, that's what we're talking about. Health form, do I have a PDF form? Yes, okay. So when I create a new, nope, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. Back to content assets. When I create a new form, over on the left-hand side, I see all of my form elements. Extra configuration is required, but the forms can accept file uploads. So if you have any requirements like what you're talking about in order to be able to upload files, if it is not already an option in your form elements, contact your school's administrators. They need to have some configuration done by our support team, and they'll need to set up essentially a storage location for where those PDF files will be uploaded to. But then yes, the forms can accept file uploads. Okay, we got that one. Okay. That summarizes the content that I want to talk to you about for a basic web orientation. Let me answer some of these more advanced questions that we've gotten over the course of the session. So the first question had to do with the multi-edit button. So let's take a look. In our particular pages that we were editing, it just used editable regions. So we had the big green buttons on the page itself that highlighted a particular space. Depending upon how your implementation is set up, your administration may have decided, instead of having open editable regions here, to instead set it up as multi-edit. In my sandbox, I do have some pages like that. So clicking on the house to get to the root of my site, inside my faculty directory, And inside any of my individual departments, our faculty pages are using multi-edit. Now, if you're in V10, you're going to see a big orange button at the top of your page. That's multi-edit. In V11, we scooted over to the right and colorized it to match with the rest of the buttons here. But essentially, if I'm looking at this page, I have a main content region down here at the bottom. So for my particular design, I have this open spot where the editor can add in content. But notice all of these pieces up here, there's no way for me to edit in on the page itself. It's because it's structured using multi-edit. Clicking on multi-edit will give me form fields. So it's asking me for all of that content that is included in that top portion here. So the reason why you would have a certain page that's set up as multi-edit is usually because the formatting has to be matching across all of the page types. If you got an editable region, well, some people might format it a little bit differently, or it may have different information inside here that maybe wasn't supposed to be there. So in order to constrain how that page is going to display, you can use multi-edit, and it can be very, very particular about how this page is set up. So multi-edit fields are just form fields. So click on that button, fill out the form fields as appropriate, hit save, and the page will be updated. I often see form fields used when we're talking, or the multi-edit used for faculty directories. I'll sometimes see it for blogs and things like that when you have a very specific structure that you want to make sure the content falls into. So, but it's just another way to be able to edit pages, that's all. All right, there are a lot of questions about RSS. So let me give you kind of a brief overview of what RSS is, just so that way you have that in the back of your mind, and then I'll see if I can answer some of these more specific questions. RSS stands for really simple syndication. It is essentially a way to provide listing data. So oftentimes our OU Campus pages are going to have like news displays. So let's see if I can find my news section in here. Here's my news listing page. On my particular implementation, it has server-side code. So there was that question about the Rss Asset. In my implementation, I have an asset that I drop in here that is the code for where the listing should be placed, but it's not the entirety of it. It has a second piece that is required in order to make it work. That's why inside my implementation, I don't actually see the listing. It's because that server-side code is necessary. So it's really two pieces. It's the asset inside of OU Campus that tells OU Campus, hey, listing goes here. And then there is server-side code that'll be on your production server that actually grabs the listing information and puts it into the list. So let's look at the live page here. Here's my listing. So this, for me, only appears on the live page because that server-side code is necessary. Depending upon how your instance is set up, you may see it actually listed inside OU Campus. It all just depends how the configuration was done. So if you are trying to add listings to your pages and you need an asset created, reach out to your administrators. If you are a key contact, reach out to our support team. And they can kind of give you some ideas about what already exists inside of your OU Campus. So you may have an asset that was already created that you could repurpose, or they may give you some understanding of what additional development might be necessary in order to get that listing. So an RSS feed is essentially a piece of content. So let's see if I can find the one that's here. So orientation. This is an RSS feed. An RSS feed is literally just data. It's content, it's information. It's not pretty, but this is the content. Inside here, you'll find items. Each item is associated with a particular piece of information. So a singular news article, a singular calendar event, things like that. So each one of these is associated with one of those news articles or one of those calendar events. This information is then picked up by that server-side script. Where's my list? And used to create the listing. Inside of OU Campus, each one of your individual pages, so my individual news listing page, when I have it checked out and I go to properties, has an RSS item associated with it. So clicking on RSS, there's the item. This is the data that is then put here. And then this data here is used to create the listing. So that is a really, really, really high level overview of how that works. Administration of your RSS feeds is done by level 10 administrators. So if you were trying to get a new listing, if your department needs its own news listing or something like that, contact your administrator. If you are an administrator and you're not quite sure what to do next, our support site has a lot of resources on it, and our support team is always here to help. So follow-up question. So what happens about RSS feeds from an external location like a calendar feed? Same generalized idea. Any of your calendar feeds should be creating essentially an RSS feed like this. You'll still need an asset inside of OU Campus that tells OU Campus put your calendar list here. You'll still need a server-side script on your production server that tells the web page, all right, this is how you're gonna list it. So you'll still need those two pieces. It'll just be customized to whether or not that feed is from OU Campus or from somewhere else. So for either way, whether it's an internal feed or an external feed, you'll need those two pieces. If you don't already have them inside of OU Campus, contact your school administrator. If you are an administrator and a key contact, contact our support team. Support team can be reached at support@omniupdate.com. Okay. So that is a very high overview of RSS. From an administrative standpoint, there is a lot more to be done in setting up RSS feeds inside of OU Campus. Right now I'm logged in as a level 8, so I don't have access to those spaces in the current setup. Check out our support site. We have some great resources there. You can find our support site at support.omniupdate.com. And if I do a quick search for RSS, you'll be able to see we have information about feeds, information about the individual feed items, and there are videos on here that essentially walk you through setting things up. So you do have resources here to help you. And again, the support team is always here as that backup in case you have questions. Whew, that was exciting. Question, in our last CMS, I just pasted the RSS link and that was it. I'm surprised OU doesn't automate this. So when we have an implementation done by our pro services team, we create a snippet or we create an asset or we create a component specifically set up for your implementation. Because OU Campus is that decoupled system, the production server that each school uses could run any type of server language. So we have to do a little bit of custom work in order to make sure it works with your particular production server. So I do understand from a user standpoint, it would be nice to just drop it in and paste it and go. But in order to have that flexibility about each school's own production server, it's a little bit more custom work, but I do get it. All right. Any other questions, go ahead and add them to the Q&A. But as you're doing that, allow me to mention our next monthly orientation training is going to be held on Friday, September 11th, 2020. Again, it runs from 10 a.m. until noon Pacific time. So it'll follow much of the same content we talked about today. We went on a couple of tangents, but it'll follow much of that basic editor process. So if you want another zip through it, or if you have others at your institution who are interested in this kind of information because they're new, or maybe they need a refresher, that registration information is available on our support site. Perfect. All right, if you guys have any additional questions, by all means, go ahead and post it. If not, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy the weekend. Take care of yourselves and enjoy.